Can Catholic priests marry? Can Catholic priests marry? Catholicism is a branch of Christianity that follows a strict set of beliefs and traditions. Among these traditions is the practice of celibacy for priests, which has been a topic of debate for centuries. In this article, we will delve into the question, can Catholic priests marry? And explore the reasons behind the requirement of celibacy, its historical context, and the challenges priests face in maintaining this commitment. In this comprehensive article, we explore the topic of whether Catholic priests can marry. We delve into the reasons behind biblical celibacy, the history of celibacy in the Catholic Church, the struggles priests may face with celibacy, the types of priests who can have a wife, and the possibility of priests having girlfriends. This informative piece offers valuable insights and answers to frequently asked questions, providing readers with a thorough understanding of this intriguing subject. Can Catholic priests marry? Generally, the tradition point toward priests not marrying. Here is the reasoning and exceptions. The Roman Catholic Church maintains a tradition of clerical celibacy, based on various theological, historical, and pastoral reasons. Here are the current teachings regarding marriage and priesthood in the Catholic Church. Clerical celibacy, the norm in the Latin, or Western, Catholic Church is that men who are to be ordained as priests must commit to a life of celibacy, thus foregoing marriage. Diaconate exception. Men who are already married may be ordained as permanent deacons. However, if they become widowed, they are usually not permitted to remarry. Ordination of married men. In the Eastern Catholic churches, which are in full communion with the Pope but follow Eastern Christian traditions, it is common for married men to be ordained as priests. However, they must be married before they are ordained, as married priests cannot remarry and unmarried priests cannot marry after ordination. Personal ordinariates. In certain situations, such as for clergy who convert from Anglicanism, the Catholic Church may allow for the ordination of married men as priests under the framework of a personal ordinariate. Petitions for dispensation. In extraordinary circumstances, a priest may petition to be released from the obligation of celibacy, a process called laicization. This does not happen frequently, and it requires approval from the Pope. Celibacy as a discipline, not a doctrine. It's important to note that the practice of clerical celibacy is a discipline of the Church, not a doctrine. Therefore, it could be changed. However, there are no signs that a significant change in this practice will occur in the near future. Continued debate. The issue of whether Catholic priests should be allowed to marry continues to be a topic of debate within the Church. While some argue that allowing marriage could help address the shortage of priests, others argue that celibacy allows for full dedication to the priesthood. The rules about clerical celibacy are complex and vary somewhat depending on the particular church within the Catholic Church, Latin versus Eastern, and the specific circumstances of the individual. It's also a topic of ongoing discussion and debate within the Church. Reasons for biblical celibacy concentration. The primary argument in favor of celibacy for Catholic priests is that it allows them to fully concentrate on their spiritual duties and devotion to God. By abstaining from marital relationships, priests can dedicate themselves entirely to serving their communities and fostering a closer relationship with the divine. Focused celibacy is seen as a means for priests to focus on their pastoral responsibilities without the distractions that may arise from family life. It allows them to be more available to their parishioners and to prioritize the spiritual needs of the congregation. Spiritual goals. For many Catholics, celibacy is viewed as a way of imitating Jesus Christ, who himself was not married. By foregoing marriage, priests can embrace a higher spiritual calling and align themselves more closely with the example set by their Savior. Spiritual advantages. Description. Undivided dedication to ministry. Celibacy enables priests to devote all their time and energy to their religious duties and the spiritual needs of their congregation. Without the obligations of a family, priests can fully commit to serving God and the Church. Modeling Christ's life. Jesus Christ lived a celibate life. By choosing celibacy, priests aim to emulate his lifestyle and dedication. It serves as a sign of their commitment to live as Christ did. Spiritual focus. Celibacy can help priests avoid the distractions and demands that come with a sexual relationship, allowing them to focus on their spiritual growth and relationship with God. Witness to the kingdom of heaven. Celibacy symbolizes life in heaven, where, according to Christian belief, there is no marriage. Priests, through their celibate lives, are living witnesses to this reality. Sacrificial love. Choosing celibacy is a form of sacrificial love. By renouncing family life and sexual relations, priests symbolize their wholehearted dedication to the Church and to God. Community bonding. Priests, through celibacy, can establish deep, platonic relationships with their parishioners. These relationships often strengthen community bonding and offer emotional fulfillment. Spiritual discipline. The commitment to celibacy is a spiritual discipline. It requires self-control and helps priests develop a high level of spiritual maturity. This table summarizes the spiritual advantages of celibacy for priests. While celibacy can present challenges, Many priests find that it enhances their spiritual life and dedication to their ministry. History of celibacy in the Catholic Church. Celibacy has been practiced in various forms throughout the history of the Catholic Church. Let's explore its historical context and significance. Here is a table outlining the history of celibacy in the Catholic Church. Period description: Early Christian era, 1st century. The New Testament suggests that the apostles lived celibate lives, although there is debate over whether this was a mandate. Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, encourages celibacy for those who can accept it. Council of Elvira, 4th century. This local council of Spanish bishops was the first known to decree clerical celibacy, stating that priests and bishops must abstain from their wives and not have children. Council of Carthage, 390 AD. This North African council ruled that bishops, priests, and deacons should be celibate, extending the requirement beyond just bishops. Pope Siricius, 385 to 399. Pope Siricius left a decree requiring celibacy for priests. Middle Ages, 11th century. The Church started to enforce the celibacy rule more strictly due to inheritance issues. Children of priests were claiming church property. Second Lateran Council, 1139. This council formally declared that priests could not marry, making the discipline of celibacy universally mandatory in the Latin, Western, Catholic Church. Council of Trent, 16th century. The council affirmed the tradition of celibacy in response to the Protestant Reformation, which rejected mandatory clerical celibacy. Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965. The council reaffirmed celibacy as a norm but also recognized the tradition of married priests in the Eastern Catholic churches. Pope Francis, 21st century. Pope Francis acknowledged the possibility of ordaining viri probati, proven men, in remote areas with a shortage of priests, but he has reaffirmed the value of celibacy as a gift to the Church. Note, it is important to understand that the celibacy rule applies primarily to the Latin Church, while the Eastern Catholic churches have different rules, often allowing for married priests. Also, celibacy is considered a discipline, not a doctrine, meaning that it can be changed, although any such change would be a major shift in long-standing tradition. Examples of celibacy in the Bible. The concept of celibacy has its roots in the Bible, with biblical figures like Jesus, Street, Paul, and John the Baptist often cited as examples of those who chose a life of celibacy to dedicate themselves fully to God's work. Spiritual reasons for celibacy. Over time, the Catholic Church formalized the requirement of celibacy for its clergy, citing spiritual reasons such as a closer union with Christ and a more profound devotion to their priestly duties. Spiritual reasons against celibacy. While celibacy is a long-standing tradition, some have questioned its necessity and argue that allowing priests to marry could potentially address issues such as loneliness and psychological stress. Here is a table outlining spiritual reasons against celibacy. Reason description: human nature. Some argue that human beings are created to live in companionship and to procreate, as indicated in Genesis 2:18. It is not good for the man to be alone, and Genesis 1:28. Be fruitful and multiply. Paul's teachings in 1 Corinthians 7. Apostle Paul acknowledges the challenges of celibacy and suggests marriage as a preventative to immorality for those who cannot exercise self-control. Priestly support. Some argue that having a spouse and family can provide emotional and spiritual support to priests, potentially enhancing their ministry. Vocation of marriage. The sacrament of marriage is highly esteemed in the Church, and it is argued that priests should have the opportunity to live out this vocation if called to it. Real-life parables. Having a family can offer experiential insight into familial relationships, which are often used as spiritual metaphors. For example, God is Father. Mitigating loneliness. A life of celibacy can lead to loneliness for some priests, which could be mitigated by the companionship of marriage. Representation. Some argue that married priests could better represent and understand the marital issues faced by their congregation. Note, these arguments are not universally accepted, and the Catholic Church continues to uphold the tradition of priestly celibacy, citing reasons such as undivided devotion to God and the Church, spiritual purity, and following the example of Christ. However, these points represent some of the spiritual arguments made against the requirement of celibacy for priests. Do priests struggle with celibacy? Maintaining celibacy can be a challenging commitment, and some priests do experience difficulties in adhering to this requirement. What percentage of priests are celibate? Statistics show that a significant majority of Catholic priests do indeed maintain celibacy, but there have been instances where some have chosen to leave the priesthood to pursue marriage. What percentage of nuns are celibate? Celibacy is not exclusive to priests. Nuns in the Catholic Church also commit to a life of celibacy. Understanding their experiences provides insight into the challenges that arise from this commitment. What kind of priests can have a wife? While celibacy is the norm for Catholic priests, there are exceptions to the rule. Retired priests. In some cases, priests may choose to retire and then marry, especially if they feel they can better serve their faith and community in a different capacity. Before ordination, some Catholic priests were already married before joining the clergy, especially in certain Eastern Catholic rites that permit married men to be ordained. Pastors in some Protestant denominations that converted to Catholicism, married pastors have been allowed to continue their ministry as married priests. Father, grandfather, minister, missionary, deacon, elder, author, welcome to our family. View all posts.